Welcome back everybody. We're going to take a look at float and clear in this video. Floats are a way to position our elements on a page. For example, we could float an image to the left, and then the rest of the content will wrap around in the rest of the available space. This is probably best seen to better understand exactly what it does. So on this home page, if you click on the game controller, and then let's go over to the product detail. I want this image, which is just here, to appear on the left hand side with all this product text and the information over on the right hand side of the image. We have already seen this can be achieved by using inline and inline block display types, but we're going to concentrate on floats in this video. If we go over to the file, which is the product detail.html, I'm going to add a new class to the product, so we can select this in the CSS. So just after the class of product, we can add a second class inside here, and let's say product detail. And then back over in the CSS, the following styles are applied specifically to this product detail page. So let's add a comment. So a CSS comment is a / star. Then our text, let's say product detail page. And we'll close this off with the star and the / again. So then I'm going to make the product div a little wider so it fits the image and also the text side by side. Let's target this product -detail class. And then we can set the width to be 660 pixels. So let's save and see how this is looking. Reload. Okay, so the image is a little big for now, but now we have the container set to be 660 pixels. Now on to floating. We want the image to float to the left hand side, or in fact we can float it to either side, but in my case I want it to be on the left hand side. And then the text over on the right hand side. So therefore we can select the product detail image inside the CSS with product detail and then image. So to begin, let's set the maximum width of the image to be 50%. And that's 50% of the container. And then we can float this to be on the left. In fact, before we do that, we'll just leave that empty and refresh. And we can see by default, we have the image and then the text, which is block level on its own separate line. If we then go ahead and add a float, and we'll float the image to the left. Let's see what effect this has. Okay, good. So we've now restricted this image to be 50%, or half the width of the container, then floated the image to the left of all the rest of the content. This means the text now occupies the remaining space on the right hand side. Now I'm going to add some more text to this product to fully show the effect that the float has. If we go over to the product detail page, and then at the very bottom after add to cart, let's just open the p tags to add some text. If you're using Visual Studio Code like I am, we can simply type in lorem and then hit tab, and then we're given some sample text which will go between these p tags. If not, you can simply write any content which you want, or do a Google search for lorem ipsum, which is these two words here, and then you'll be able to copy and paste some sample text. Give that a save, reload, and we can see straight away that now there is more text available. We can see a lot better now the image is floating to the left of the rest of the content, and then the remaining text is wrapping around the rest of the space. We can also float this to the right instead of the left. So let's give this a go. Refresh, and then the same happens but on the other side. And we can also set this to be none. And now we're back to where we started, with no float taking place, and then the block level text will appear on the next line. So floats are really useful for this kind of thing, but like most things, there are some drawbacks. Before a lot more recent layout techniques were created, floats were, and sometimes still are used, to lay out a full web page. you would often see the main content floated to the left and also a sidebar on the right. This does work, but when we use these floats, something weird can appear to happen. To show this more clearly, I'm going to set up a simple div just above the footer with an image and some text inside. So let's go over to the product detail and then down to the footer area. So scroll down to the bottom. So just between this main and footer, let's set up a simple div. First of all, with an image and the source. This can be any image, but I'm going to use one from our images folder. And let's say the controller.jpg. Then the text in the p tags of hello. So let's go over to the product detail page in the browser and then refresh. And there's our image and the text down the bottom. So this looks as we would expect inside the browser. So let's go back over to the text editor and add a float to this image. So inline is fine. For this example, we'll set the float to be on the left. And let's see how this looks with a refresh. So we can see straight away that something strange has happened. The content below, which was the div, or for this footer area, now moves up alongside our image. But we want this to be right at the bottom of the page, as it's a footer. If we go over to the developer tools, right click and inspect, let's take a look and see what is happening. If we go ahead and click on the arrow, and then select the parent div, and this is the div which we added for the image and the text of hello. So let's go to the image, and this is the parent div here. We can see if we hover over this div, appearing just here, we see some dimensions. So the div is 1000 pixels wide by 19.2. So this shows the div as only having the same height as the text of this hello text here inside of the container. It doesn't seem to take into account the height of the image. This is because floated items do not affect the height of the parent container. This means that this footer area below basically ignores this image and is pushed up to the height of the hello text. We can fix this by setting the overflow to be auto on the container. So let's go over to our div and we can set the style and then add in the overflow of auto. Back over and refresh and scroll down, and now our footer is back at the very bottom. If we go back into these dev tools and go down to the div, which we've seen before, give that a click, and we can now see on the screen, let's scroll up, that the height of the div is now 425 pixels, which is also accounting for the height of this image too. Solution to this floating problem is called the clear fix. This overflow property will fix the problem in most browsers. You can also do a Google search for the micro clear fix, and you will find some more CSS solutions to this problem. This will also become less of a problem too when we start looking at the CSS grid and Flexbox later in the course, rather than using any floats for layout. So let's close this. And just to recap, when we use a floated element just like this image, the height is not taken into account, which is why this footer area was pushed up below this text here, which wasn't floated. So that's something which is really key to understand when using floats. Also, when working with floats too, there is also another CSS property to be aware of, and this is called clear. Again, this is probably best seen in practice to understand. I am first going to modify this example to have a left and also a right floated element. So at present we have the image which is floated to the left. Now let's go ahead and open up the p tags and float this to the right. So style, float to the right, semicolon at the end. And then let's add a third element which is not floated. So some simple text will do for this. So let's say not floated and save that. Over to the browser and then refresh. So at the moment we have the image which is floated to the left, the text on the right, and in fact, just to make this simpler, we'll add floated in there. So we'll have the floated image to the left, we'll have the floated text to the right, and then the not floated text in the center. This not floated text is alongside the image and also on the same line as the floated text. Clear lets us specify if this non-floated element can be placed alongside these floated ones or not. If we go back over to the p tags and then also add a style property, and we'll say clear the left float. Over to the browser and refresh. The not floated text now appears below. This is because we are basically saying this non-floated element is not allowed to be placed next to this image, which is floated to the left. We can also declare that we don't want it to be positioned next to right floated elements too, and we can change this by clearing the right. And now it's alongside the floated text, but on the next line. So this tells the browser not to place this alongside any right floated elements. This is why it appears below on its own separate line. Or we can go ahead and clear both the left and the right together by setting this clear value to be both. And then refresh. And now the text is below both the left and right floated elements. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove this extra div section, as we don't need this inside the project, and then save that. And we can also make sure the product detail image is floated to the left. And then our project is back to normal, and also we can remove this extra lorem ipsum text. Let's go back up to the product and remove this long section of text. And there we go. So this is how we can use float and clear. It can be quite a bit to take in if you have not seen this before, but this is just one of the quirks you will come across when building websites.